On NDTV Profit, I'm Vikram Oza, and we are discussing the mother of all deals, the India-EU FTA. And joining us now on this broadcast is David Roche, strategist at Quantum Strategy, a long-time observer of global capital flows and geopolitics and how major economic blocs are repositioning themselves at moments of structural change. So, David, very good to have you with us. You've been tracking this. Tell us, in your understanding from a global strategy standpoint, how significant do you think this FTA really is? Is this a regional trade agreement as you see it, or do you think it's a marker of a deeper shift in how the world economy, the global economy, how it's reorganizing?
I think it's a deeper shift. And you know, one of the things that struck me, Vikram, when I was looking at the photographs on your screen was you could see that Prime Minister Modi and Ursula von der Leyen actually enjoyed being together. And this is the first time, I think, in about 2 years, I've seen any heads of states or global leaders actually looking like they were having a good time. Now, that tells you something. It tells you perhaps it's not the only thing that matters, but I just point it out because I think it points to the depth of the entente between India and Europe. And of course, you've got to see this in the same context as the Mercosur agreement that the EU is signing with Latin America, with Mr. Carney going to China, and the EU even organizing or negotiating deals with China. What does it tell you? It tells you that in a world in which global order is being torn up and shattered by President Trump, there are other countries, and very serious countries, who are coming together as strategic and reliable partners, to quote what Mr. Da Costa said about this particular deal. If you look at the economics, it doesn't look so enormous, right? I mean, Indian exports to the EU are 4% of GDP, and turn it the other way around, it's 0.7% of European GDP. But this will boost a number of things that are important. Number one, it is a hedge for India against America. It is also a hedge for Europe against America. It will boost GDP in both countries, probably by 0.11 to 0.15% of GDP, but nevertheless, it's material. And it will boost trade by probably 50 to 60%. That's two-way trade. So I think in my book, you cannot judge a deal like this by simply looking at statistics. That's a very dry economic way of trying to interpret history. This is a deal about culture, about stability, about commitment in a period in which those qualities are singularly lacking between nations because of the disruption of Donald Trump. So I think it's very important.
Yeah, David, from everything that you've said so far about it, this agreement is signaling some kind of pushback against the economic decoupling that we've seen. And my earlier panel discussion was highlighting that as well. But if you talk about history, Europe has been criticized for regulatory overreach and slow growth. It begs the question why Europe is willing to open up so decisively to India right now.
Well, look, let's say one thing first. The negotiation of this deal has been a decade long in the process. So I don't think we can say Donald Trump came along and hey ho, suddenly we turned around, the Europeans turned around and tried to diversify away from America, because it's a much longer process. And you're perfectly right. I mean, Europe is really moves at the pace of an elephant on these sort of things. But once the deal is done, it's properly done. However, I would say that Europe's inspiration for this deal, for Mercosur, for all the other things it's trying to negotiate, is clearly to get out of the way of Donald Trump. I mean, we don't know in Europe whether Donald Trump is going to tear up NATO tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, but we know we cannot depend on America for either fair trade, economic protection, or indeed for defense. So that is the inspiration for pushing through this sort of deal, and the sort of, I would say, the recent almost fervor on behalf of the European Commission to make sure that this deal got done and was not going to be held up by any partisan interest by, smaller or bigger European states. So I think that's important to bear in mind.
And David, but when we talk about this deal today, we're speaking about India and the EU accounting for roughly a quarter of global GDP. Now, this is a nice headline to go with, but do you think this combination meaningfully could alter global trade gravity? And it could kind of counter the axis of US and China?
Well, yes, but let's keep it in proportion. And unfortunately, here we have to go to back to the dry nuts and bolts of economic statistics, and rather than the more important kind of overall cultural significance of this deal. So let's get back to that then. Look, India is a huge economy. Europe's a huge economy, but they're not connected. You're talking about trade between the two economies being 4% of Indian GDP and 0.8% of European GDP. So the growth comes from connecting them. Now, that growth is going to happen. I think that the interconnection, that is imports and exports between the two countries, will probably grow 50 to 60% quite quickly as a result of this. That is a two-way trade, so it doesn't, kind of get expressed well in GDP, but it's one hell of an increase in this interconnectivity you were talking about. And there is the other aspect. This actually reduces the amount of trade that India and the Europeans will be doing with China by 5 to 9%, because you're diversifying away from China to do more trade with each other. Now, that is a part and parcel of de-risking trade with China. I'm not being anti-Chinese. I'm just saying that's what happens in these trade deals. And it works to the benefits of both economies because it actually reduces the risk of their global trade. And finally, of course, it does, it provides a hedge for India and indeed for Europe against the maverick behavior of Donald Trump.
Indeed.
So it matters.
Yes. So then, does it matter enough for global investors who are reading this agreement? Does it change India's risk-reward profile in portfolios?
Oh, yes. Yes, it does. I mean, whether you're a global investor in terms of all the industries you were talking about in the previous segment of the program, or whether you're a portfolio investor, I mean, this clearly cements a stable relationship. And, if there's one thing that's missing in portfolios, or whether you're thinking about investing in a factory in India or in Europe, it's a stable relationship. The volatility that you can go to bed tonight and wake up this morning and find that the US president has put 25% tariffs on Korea overnight without any introduction because he doesn't like the speed of their parliamentary process. I mean, that is a nightmare for portfolio managers and corporate managers. So I think this is, in risk reduction terms, it's significant. It's not perhaps a nuclear significance, but it's the beginning of something which is very serious, which will, of course, attract more capital to India.
Capital, you think this deal is going to strengthen India's hand in future negotiations, whether it's with the United States or the United Kingdom?
Well, I think when you're talking to the United Kingdom, you're really talking, they're not going to like this, the British, but you're talking about a small country on the edge of Europe. It pretended for a while it wasn't really there, but it is there. And I think that the UK will, of course, having done its own deal, will want to expand it. It doesn't want to be left behind. It provides that motivation. But I don't think it influences how the Americans are going to treat India. That depends on, whatever the hell it depends on. But it's not the same today as tomorrow. It can be anything. So no, I don't think this stabilizes relationships between India and America. What it does is stabilize relationships between India and the rest of the world in a partnership. And that is a very important factor.
And very quickly, David, for want of time, because if you look at capital flows right now, which are the sectors in India that you think stand to attract the most European investment because of this FTA, if not immediately, but in time to come?
I actually think that one of the things that may happen in India is that it becomes a manufacturing hub.
Okay.
And that the diversification away from investment in China towards investment in India may be very important. Of course, India is already a service hub. But what I'm saying is perhaps it's coming to the day for manufacturing.
Well, looking forward to more developments on the back of this FTA, David. But thank you very much for joining us for that global perspective. As always, insightful and thought-provoking. Thank you indeed.